it had the audio okay, the video okay, and everything. So basically what I'm doing is I'm learning Clojure from a book, and I am sharing what I have what I have learned basically, and I am not using or reproducing the book in any way. I'm not using the same variable names, or I'm not reading from the book, so I think this is good copyright wise. So at first I'll start with functions. So this is and I am in VS Code. So this is how I define a function. This is how I define a function. So this is define. So this is how I define a function, and you take you store a parameter of a function like that. Before you have to give a name. So let's give it a name. So it's a square function. It's very basic stuff. So what it does is it returns x times x. So this is in prefix notation, x times x. And what I like about this, even in the REPL, when you match an ending parenthesis, it is properly shown. Okay, so I think that is defined. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's square 3.8. Okay, yeah, so it works. So we can do many more checks with it. So like 23, and yeah, this basically works. So there is also something that I learned new today that I didn't know before. So I have dabbled with prefix notation before in Scheme and Racket and so on, but I don't really know those languages. So it's like I have been a tourist of those languages, and I've learned something about the syntax, sometimes about the semantics, but this basically was just touring languages. So and there is something new that I learned. So I don't know whether this is supported by other languages or not. So there is something called arity. So arity is like how many. That's a fancy way of saying how many parameters does your function take. So that is basically it. So there is nothing else. And so so for example, the function that we defined, that is square. So square basically has an arity of 1 because it takes in one argument. Okay, and if we were to define some function that takes in 2 arguments, then the arity would be 2. So this is pretty common stuff. You can define a function in almost any languages, and you can control how many parameters does a function take. There is also like variable arity, like args and quargs in Python, and that is also supported in here in Clojure. So let's see this. So there are also functions that can be multi-arity. So this is something that I learned new today. Functions that can be multi-arity. So let's do this. We can choose whether what function how many argument does a function take, and it can be variable. So if we supply the function with one variable, then it behaves the way that we want it to behave for one arity. Okay, and if we supply the variable the function, if we supply the function with 2 variables, 2 parameters while calling the function, and it will behave the way we have predefined it. So let's do it. So it's basically def. Let's do a function. Let's say something like a sum. Okay, so it's a sum function. Okay, so let's do this. Let's say this is this just adds up the the numbers that are supplied to this function. So for this, this is our function, this is our sum function. Then we write another parenthesis. Okay, and we give it like it doesn't have anything. Okay, so what it does is it just takes in no argument, and for so if no arguments is supplied, we want to return a 0. Okay, so this is what we do. So we return a 0 like this. Okay, so this is our sum function behaves. So we'll not we'll implement a version later that actually takes in arbitrary numbers of argument, but let's do this for one or two stuff like that. Okay, and so this is for one. This is basically zero arity. It takes in no argument at all. So if we take the function to define like one arity, okay, so it's just one, so it returns one. Okay, and if we do something like it takes in two arguments, two arguments are supplied while the function was called, so we would like to return x and x plus y here. Okay, so this is our function is. So this is our function, basically just it's defined in one line. So it's a function. Let's call this. So let's call sum with absolutely no arguments. So it's 0, right? So then if we do it with one argument, let's supply it with one argument, and that is let's say 3. Let's say 3. Okay, so if we call some 3 like this, then it is 3, like we pretty much expect it to. And then if we go ahead and do some 3 and 5, we call it with some 3 and 4. Okay, so sum of 3 and 4, so it's pretty much as we expect. So this is very neat idea. This is a very neat idea, like the it depends, the behavior actually depends on how we define for the number of arity that we choose. And this is a like a function that like does numerical adding, so we can choose it to be something very different. We can completely change how this function behaves, like not adding, like doing very different stuff. Let's do and go crazy. Okay, so let's define this function defin, okay, multi-arity, let's name it. Okay, and what we do is there are like two arguments, sorry, if there are like no arguments, we are going to return something like no args supplied. Okay, and that just returns that. And if we find ourselves in a situation where two arguments are provided, okay, so what we do, we subtract one from the other. Okay, so we subtract the second from the first. Okay, and this is it. And if we were supplied with three actually three arguments, then what you do is we multiply them. Okay, so this is a very neat idea. So our everything is satisfied, every parenthesis match, and so we will now call this function to see how whether it behaves the way that we want it to. Okay, multi-arity, let's don't supply it anything. Okay, no args applied as we expect. So and then we do it with two numbers. Okay, 2 and 3. Let's see, yeah, -1 as we expected. Okay, and then we do it with 3 arguments. Okay, so we are supposed to see a multiplication happen of all the arguments that are supplied, 120, just as we expect. Yeah, so this is very neat actually. Then I told you that there is a way to actually supply to define the function in a way that it can accept an arbitrary number of arguments while the function is being called, like we see args and quargs in Python, like basically args in Python. So let's do something like that. Let's do it. So we'll do like this, defin let's call this a greetings function. So it just basically greets people, okay, greetings. And if we see, let's not do the catch-all function that if it gets no argument then it says something like there are no names supplied. So let's not do that. So let's do something simple, like a name, and let's say movies. So this is how it's done. So movies, okay. And so there can be multiple movies that can be supplied here, okay. So what we do is, here we call the string function. I just learned this today, so I hope the syntax is on the point, otherwise I'll just go back and see how this is done. Okay, so the string is hi, then we get a name that is supplied, and then your favorite movies are favorite movies are okay. And then we do something that is string.join. Yeah. So I'm just having to look this up. Here, so we will call something like Clojure.string join. Okay, so favorite movies are, then we do something like this. Clojure dot string slash join. So this is an inbuilt function. Okay, so we'll just name the movies here. Okay, I hope this is properly defined. All the parentheses are matched. Okay, so this runs without any error. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so this should have been called like greeting, but let's say greetings. So the name is, let's say someone's name is Mark, and let's start with one movie. Okay, let's the movie be like Matrix. Okay, Matrix Reloaded. So okay, hi Mark, your favorite movies are Matrix Reloaded. So this is not a catch-all function, like we are not doing manipulation, like if there is a single movie listed then we are doing movie as opposed to the plural movies. We're not doing that, we are keeping things simple. So let's do it with other things. So like greetings, let's say someone's name is let's say Mandy. So Mandy, and her favorite movies are, let's say, Lord of the Rings, The Return. That's a big name, so Return of the King. Okay, and another movie is like something like Superbad, or something like Tropic Thunder. Okay, let's see. So it actually, we needed something like a space in our joining of movies. So let's do this. Let's go back to the, so before we join movies, so because we are seeing that it is defined like ampersand movies, so that means it can take multiple. So when multiple things are joined, we want something like this to be added to it. Okay, so we redefine the function. Let's now call it with basically same thing, Mandy, Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, Superbad, and Tropic Thunder. So yeah, it works now. There are proper commas. So I found this to be a very neat idea, to be able to, define functions and make it behave completely different ways based on the number of parameters that are supplied. So remember how we did with multi-arity. So the multi-arity is a function. So if we just didn't supply it anything, uh, it just outputs a string that no args were supplied. And if we just call it with something like one, just one argument, then okay, so it was not defined, I guess. Yeah. So let's just call it with say two arguments, 100 and 200. So remember that it actually subtracts the second argument from the first. So yeah, so it's negative 100. So that's what we expect. And if we just call it with three numbers, multi-arity, then say three numbers, okay, 200, 3, and 3.14. So yeah, so it just multiplies all the numbers that are there and returns a floating point. So a function can behave completely differently based on the number of arguments that you supply, and you can completely control it while defining the function. I find this a really neat idea, and it was very fun to learn it.